Hello ladies and gents, Reluctant Biker here. Thank you very much for checking out my channel, and thank you for joining me in this video. If you are new, welcome. If you're new to my channel, welcome. And if you are a subscriber, I want to take a moment and thank you for your support. I'm here with my new bike, the Moto Guzzi V7 Stone. I purchased this bike at the start of the new year, the 2021, and I've put in it about 1200 miles. Today I want to take a moment and share with you what I've discovered about this bike, my deep impressions of it. That will include the positives and the negatives. So if you are interested in this bike, please stick around and we will get started. Thank you again. I will begin with a brief prologue detailing this bike's backstory for those of you not familiar with Guzzi bikes. This is a 2017 Moto Guzzi V7 Stone, which needs a bit of explaining. Moto Guzzi is the name of one of the most famous European manufacturing companies located in Italy and named after Carlo Guzzi, who was one of the company's original two founders. Now, forever true to their tradition, Guzzi has been making motorcycles on the Italian soil since about the start of the 1920s. Now, the Roman numeral 3 stands for third edition or third generation, previously having produced Gen 1 and Gen 2. And finally, Stone designates the model. In addition to the Stone, the V7 comes in 3 other models or versions. We have the Racer, the Special, and the Anniversario, with the Stone being the base model. Now, it is important to note that with each generation, Guzzi has added slight but noticeable upgrades in hardware and cosmetics. What's more, this year, 2021, Guzzi came out with its lineup of 850cc V7 models, making a complete departure from the third gen bikes. Let's begin with the general specs. Being a 750 in name only, the Guzzi Stone is an entry-level, modern, mid-range, retro-style motorcycle, tame and nimble enough for the city, with plenty of heart and power for highway riding. Now, the V7 Stone has actually a 744cc, not 750, transverse 90-degree V-twin 4-stroke dual-cylinder engine. It puts out 52 horsepower at 6,200 RPM and 44 feet-pounds of torque at 4,900 RPM. The third generation sees a 10% increase in power from the second generation. It's air-cooled, fuel-injected, has an electric starter, a single-disc dry clutch, a 6-speed gearbox, and a shaft drive. Say goodbye to chain maintenance. With the 5.5 gallons in fuel capacity, this bike gets pretty decent gas mileage. In the city, this Guzzi averages anywhere between 20 and 30 miles per gallon, depending on the traffic. You can say that in the city, this bike does not get the best mileage out there, especially when compared to my previous Suzuki TU250X that averaged about 70 to 80 miles per gallon in the city. Now, on the highway, this bike does a lot better. It has averaged anywhere between 48 miles per gallon to 51, 52 miles per gallon. So that's a massive difference from the way it performs in the city and on the highway. I need to clarify something about the tank. Now, the tank takes 5.5 US gallons. Technically, it's 5.55 US gallons, which includes the reserve, which holds about 1.06 US gallons. In the beginning, I wasn't quite sure what type of gas to feed it because the manual does not clarify it entirely. In the beginning, I actually fed it regular gas, but then I called the dealer and they recommended that I move it up to premium. And I have been actually feeding it premium gas ever since. I've asked other Guzzi riders out there, and some seem to believe that regular gas is totally fine and that feeding it premium gas will not get you better results. So do your research, but I highly recommend that you actually start with premium, because I did notice a vast difference between the way this bike responded to regular gas and to premium. And with premium gas, it's a lot smoother. So highly recommend you actually put in premium gas. Let's talk about speed, power, and performance. The Guzzi Stone has a 6-speed transmission, and changing the gears is for the most part effortless once you get the hang of it. There is absolutely no feedback when you start the bike in the first gear from neutral. One does not hear the usual initial clunk when starting the bike on the first gear. But once you get the bike moving, then it operates as other bikes do. Now, a side note here, trying to find the neutral is a bit of a hassle. A challenge that, unlike many others, never becomes easier the more you ride the bike. The Guzzi performs like a dream on the highway. This bike boasts a top speed of 124 miles per hour, and while it is not the fastest thing on the open road, it is not the slowest either. It has decent pickup speed, and it can effortlessly overtake the occasional Toyota Prius or Subaru Crosstrek. It can easily do 65 miles all day long, but anything beyond that puts a visible and audible strain on the engine. One can hear the dual cylinders huffing and puffing at 75 miles per hour. Now, it can do it, but only for short bouts or stretches. In terms of stability, the bike is very steady and planted on the highway. I have been especially impressed by how steady it is in windy conditions. I have ridden it on very windy days, and it slices through wind like a knife through butter, so smoothly, so steadfastly. And I believe the contours of the bike are to thank for its aerodynamic efficiency. Perhaps it was designed with the Roman god Jupiter in mind. After all, he was the god of air. So in brief, the Guzzi Stone loves the open road. It handles it beautifully. Now, that's not to say that the wind does not hit you. It's a naked bike, so it does, even with a windscreen as big as mine. But it won't affect the stability of the bike by kind of shoving it around. Now let's talk about brakes and safety. The brakes on the Guzzi do their job very well. The front brake is defined by a 320mm stainless steel single disc with Brembo 4 piston caliper. In the rear we have a single 260mm stainless steel disc with a Brembo 2 piston caliper. Now combined, the pair of Brembos provide enough power to stop this bike when needed. The bike is also equipped with ABS and Moto Guzzi's traction control system, the Moto Guzzi Controllo Trazione, with two sensitive modes, one for normal riding conditions and the other for rain or wet riding conditions. It can also be switched off, but Moto Guzzi does not recommend it, and neither do I, because you never know when you need it. After all, we ride motorcycles, and their very existence is synonymous with the unexpected. In my opinion, the Guzzi V73 Stone was not designed to be super comfortable. Weighing at 460 pounds wet, the Stone can be qualified as a heavy bike. With the engine off, it is not the easiest to move around, especially in tight spaces or even occasionally backing into a parking space. Once you get moving with it though, handling it is not a problem at all. In motion, the bike is very agile and easy to handle, performing very well both on normal or tight turns. Now let me address the seating position. As a standard bike, it sports a straight up riding position with a twist. On this bike, it is a bit of a challenge to keep your back straight. Unlike on my previous bike, the Suzuki TU250X, where I was able to do so without any problems, on the Guzzi I have to lean slightly forward when reaching for the handlebars, and the massive, muscular and Herculean fuel tank gets the credit for that, spanning the yawning distance between the seat and the handlebars like the Golden Gate Bridge of San Francisco. Yet I do not mind this riding posture much. I kinda got used to it. It is the seat and the harsh suspension with which I have a bone to pick. Based on my riding experience, the flat seat leaves much to be desired. It just isn't comfortable. It's made of genuine leather, the name of Guzzi is imprinted on it, and it looks elegant and impressive, definitely complementing the looks of the bike. Yet it does not provide much cushioning to one's behind. I wish it did not move though. It's not fixed. It's a bit loose. Too much for my taste. The seat also doesn't absorb bumps as smoothly and painlessly as my previous bike. Any road imperfection, however minimal in size, such as a small bump here and a pothole there, tend to deliver terrifying shocks to the rider's spine. The experience of riding the Guzzi on the roads of New York City is a jarring one, which will leave one with a bit of a trauma. Guzzi should have done better on this end. One more thing to note about the seat. This is a two-seater saddle, according to Guzzi, designed to sit two people, and it includes a passenger belt. Now looking at it, with two people on it, the seating looks a bit cramped, which is why instead of a useless passenger belt, Guzzi should have included a reel rack fitted with passenger grab rail or handles. Of course, Guzzi has one, but it will cost you about $500 with taxes and all to get it. Regarding the seat height is 30.3 inches. I am 5 feet 10 and I have no problem flat-footing it, and the pegs do not get in the way as they are situated slightly forward from the midsection point, a position I simply love. The pegs are located at a very natural, comfortable position, which I find ideal for riding comfort. As I mentioned earlier, the suspension is harsh. In the front, we have a 40mm non-adjustable telescopic forks with 5.1 inches of travel, and in the rear we have two adjustable spring preload shocks. If I were to change anything on this Guzzi, it would be the shocks, but because they cost anywhere between $1,000 to $2,000, at least a pair of decent ones, I really can't afford them right now. So I am stuck with the stock shocks for the moment. At 100 by 90, the front tire is 18 inches with the 110/80 optional, and the rear tire comes at 17 inches but with a 130/80 dimension. In short, the skinnier and taller in the front, fatter and shorter in the back. Both front and rear tires are Pirelli Sport Demon. They are tubeless and the wheel rims are alloy. Now the tires on the Guzzi Stone look truly magnificent and nicely complement the bike. Just like the bike, they too look muscly and robust. On the surface, they mean business. In practice, though, not all is as it seems. While they might look the part, they do not perform the part. Let me explain. They grip well in a straight line, and they do not perform badly on bends and twists, but you must be very careful with them. They're a bit unpredictable. I've had a few slips on turns, and they have a terrible tendency to follow ruts and grooves on the road, a phenomenon called tramlining. In terms of storage, there is none to speak of. The bike is equipped with a tool bag, more like a pouch, located under the seat. In it, one finds a fuse puller and a pin wrench, aka hook spanner, which one needs to adjust the preload. In the manual, however, Guzzi says that you need 2 of these, yet they only included 1. I think it's a crude joke on the bikers. A side note on the electronics. This bike does not have a USB port charger. One can add one, and according to owner anecdotes, it is inexpensive, but it's still a hassle to actually install it. The battery tender the battery tender connector is located under the seat, and it is easily accessible. I am a bit confused though, because in the manual Guzzi states that when charging the battery, one must remove it from the bike. What gives, Guzzi? The instrument cluster includes a lone speedo that embraces in its bosom a multifunctional digital display and warning lights. The digital LCD display includes a gear indicator and a general alarm indicator light, which will flash red when the rider exceeds the set RPM minimum and maximum threshold, which is 4,500 for the braking period, followed by 8,000 RPM. Although in Europe, the maximum engine RPM cannot exceed 7,200 revolutions per minute, according to the manual. While there is a fuel reserve warning light, this Guzzi does not include a fuel gauge. Thus, up to the moment the fuel reserve light turns on, the rider is kept a bit, not entirely, in the dark on the level of fuel in the tank. Now, I've got to say, I'm not crazy about the LCD digital display. It's convoluted, and for the most part, it includes useless information for the rider, who would have been much better served if provided with a fuel gauge instead of an average traveling speed. Now let's talk about fit and finish. The contours of the Guzzi V7 3 Stone resemble very much an ancient Greek or Roman god, probably Zeus or Jove or Jupiter, which are really one and the same god. It's robust and muscly. It has a commanding presence about it, enabled greatly by the cone-shaped dual exhaust pipe in matte black that gracefully branch out, sweeping down and up, and the 2-cylinder heads adorned with the aluminum stripes that jut out like horns of a bull. I like the finish quality on the Guzzi. The fuel tank on my 3rd generation Guzzi Stone is painted in a satin finish, giallo energico color, which translated into English means energetic yellow color, to match the same flat black as the rest of the bike. The color yellow is a huge gamble on a bike, but the Guzzi made it work. It's such a unique color, which the camera does not do it justice. In fact, when I bought this bike, the first thing I planned to do was paint its tank, but the guy who sold it to me begged me not to touch its current color. In his opinion, I would be making a terrible mistake. It was not until I first saw the sunlight hit it that I realized how right he was. It is such a brilliantly energetic, unique color, and I have come to greatly appreciate it. So the color stayed. The tank is adorned with an aluminum fuel cap whose design really boggles the mind. I can't quite pinpoint what it is or what it's supposed to resemble. The sun? Beats me. I do not know. As you can clearly see, there are no chrome parts on this Guzzi. Instead, it embraces matte black, which looks great, but it is such a dust and dirt magnet. If you park it outside, you will need to wipe it down every time you take it for a ride. A final point about the fit and finish. From a distance, the bike screams style. Sitting on it, the words odd and asymmetrical come to mind. What was Guzzi thinking, including a single analog gauge positioned so awkwardly on the bike? It is an eyesore, a great blemish, and a royal fuck-up on Guzzi's part. The instrument cluster is missing the tachometer, and the speedo is slightly to the left in an awkward position. Now, the Italians are the masters of design, but in this case they blew it. The previous Stone generation had a dual analog gauge including both the speedo and the tacho. The logic behind the single gauge choice boggles the mind. What rider on this planet would prefer a Guzzi with a single gauge over a Guzzi with a dual speedometer and tachometer gauge? Especially one whose speedo is positioned so awkwardly on the bike. Now, in short, I do not have yet that emotional connection with the bike as I had with my Suzuki TU250X. And as I mentioned, it's partly the fault of the Italians. They really dropped the ball when they decided to include only one analog gauge. And that would have been fine if it had been positioned in a symmetrical kind of a way so the bike looks elegant. But positioned so awkwardly to the left, I don't know, I still haven't gotten used to it. So, yeah, we've come to the end of the video, guys, and I just want to take a moment and thank you all. If you made it this far into the video, I do want to take this time and say thank you so much for your support, and I hope I did not waste your time. Have a great summer, and ride safely. Be safe, please. And if you don't ride, just take care of yourself. Alright guys, be well. Reluctant Biker, out.